Cross Corridor. It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Kerry Jr. II. Today on the show, families are carrying the quiet weight of mental health struggles and the cost of missing the warning signs. How can we do better?
We'll also look at how Michigan is reimagining the path into teaching. It's opening new doors to the classroom while raising tough questions about quality and equity.
And we'll explore what happens when long-standing religious traditions meet the drive and create something more inclusive.
Plus, eating healthy often feels impossible in the rush of daily life. But Ypsilanti's Vegan Festival proves plant-based food can be welcoming and doable, even for those who still eat meat.
And that's today's thread. Whether it's caring for mental health, preparing new teachers, reshaping tradition, or reimagining food, people are finding creative ways to meet today's challenges.
We begin with one of the most urgent of those challenges, mental health. And what's at stake when the warning signs of suicide go unseen? September is Suicide Prevention Month. It's a time to bring attention to a crisis that touches far too many families. This month is a reminder that life can feel overwhelming as we juggle family, work, friends, and everything in between. Too often, what gets left behind is our own well-being. And when mental health goes unaddressed, the consequences can be devastating. Suicide rates in the U.S. steadily climbed between 2000 and 2018, dipped briefly, and remain elevated today. On average, one person dies by suicide every 11 minutes. Behind those numbers are real people, neighbors, loved ones, friends, whose struggles too often remain invisible until it's too late. Joining us to raise awareness and share how we can spot the warning signs is Lori Edelson, a psychotherapist and the owner of Birmingham Maple Clinic. Lori, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. So we're talking about a devastating result from mental health challenges that go unaddressed. Could you lay out a trajectory for how suicidal ideations develop in the first place?
Yes, and it's a particularly somber day for so many reasons, 9/11 and what's happened with Charlie Kirk, and here we are talking about something that just destroys the survivors who suffer from a loved one who has completed a suicide. We really need to understand that everyone experiences sadness and depression. Everyone has experienced periodic helplessness or hopelessness. But there is a profound difference between those normal feelings and what a person who is very, very serious about committing suicide experiences. It's measurably different and more intense. However, there are a lot of similarities. So the bad day that we experience normally is a temporary state of disappointment, while suicidal depression is prolonged. It's a clinical illness that involves thoughts of ending one's life. It's not just a bad day. It's a serious medical condition that requires immediate professional attention. The problem is that, like you said, others don't necessarily see what the struggling individual is going through. So we do want to alert the public to typical warning signs that they may not be aware of, and also recommendations for how to respond when you do see these.
Lord.
It's also possible that someone who's thinking about suicide doesn't show any of these typical symptoms or signs. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. I don't want to give that impression either.
Certainly. And thank you for drawing that distinction for us. And before we get into how folks can really make an impact in other people's lives and discern some of these warning signs, I do want to lay out the problem that we're dealing with a little bit more, specifically when it comes to the problem in Michigan, because Michigan has a suicide rate that's higher than the national average. And I'm wondering, from your professional perch, why you think that is.
So Michigan rates are higher. They're not significantly higher, but they are higher. Michigan suicide rates as of 2023 were about 14.9 suicides per 100,000 individuals. And in the U.S., in the same period of time, it was 14.1. So we're close to the national average. We're about number 21 of all the states in terms of suicide rates. We're not at the top. Interestingly, the West and Midwest have elevated rates compared to the East Coast.
And I will jump in to say, as someone who used to live in the American West and report on these issues there, that something that I would hear from public health and mental health officials was that it was because of the widespread ownership and access to guns in the West that really had an effect on those higher rates of suicide there. Please go on.
So access to guns is certainly one of the factors that leads to higher suicide rates, and yet Michigan does not have like the highest rate of gun ownership in the country. But what we know is that it's very heavily male-dominated statistic. More men commit suicide than women. In Michigan, nearly 8 of 10 suicides are men. In rural areas where there are more marginalized populations, we find that the American Indian and the Alaska Native people have the highest risk of suicide compared to other racial groups. And also, while older adults do have higher rates, the suicide is the second leading cause of death for young men between 15 and 34. So we need to look at the male population and ask, why are more men likely to commit suicide? And in Michigan, our rates, interestingly, did not experience that dip or that drop in rates that you quoted nationally. They have steadily gone up every year through the present. Men are socialized to be tough. They still are. And in Michigan and in many of the rural areas in Michigan, they are still socialized to be financially solvent, to take care of their families, to conceal their emotion and not show weakness. And if they feel they're not meeting the expected standard, they don't reach out and they don't talk about it. They internalize, they see themselves as failures. There's a shortage of mental health care opportunities in many of the areas in Michigan. In the Upper Peninsula and the Upper Lower Peninsula, it's very hard to find accessible mental health care, and also culturally, it's not as accepted. It's not as acceptable.
Lori,
sorry.
If I may jump in for a moment here, this is something we talk about a lot on this show, and that is masculinity, toxic masculinity, the effects on men's mental health. I'm wondering what you think are some of the effective ways to break down these barriers for men.
I wish I had the answer, but I think that mental health awareness, doing as much as we can for young men in the schools, in public broadcasting, on the news, in our community centers, are ways to help educate families and young men and young women about the importance of mental health care for all individuals. It's easy for me to say that, working in a suburban area and close to Metro Detroit, where we do have a lot more resources. Interestingly, Governor Whitmer has created some really strong programs, committees and task forces in Michigan while she's been governor to help address these issues for men.
So you would say that, I mean, we know we've had in the past governors who have done things that have been really detrimental for mental health. I mean, I'm thinking about all the way back to John Engler
Absolutely.
closing mental health hospitals.
That's right.
So it sounds like Governor Whitmer represents a different moment for mental health in the state. Would you say that's right?
Absolutely, I would say that's right. And one of the interesting facts about Michigan that I think we have to pay attention to is since the suicide rates are so much higher for men, in Michigan we have some very strong male-dominated employment industries. The auto industry is, even though there are certainly women in the auto industry, it's still more dominated by men, and also construction industry workers. Interestingly, construction industry workers have the highest rates of suicide of other industries. And while we don't have as many construction workers in Michigan as we do auto workers, these two industries have very high rates of suicide, and they're heavily male dominated.
Interesting. Can you expand on why you think that is? Is it because of the fact that they are male dominated and that men are not getting some of perhaps the input that they might get from women, or the support they might get working alongside women?
Yes, but I don't think it's intentional. I think that if you go to work and you see a woman crying at her desk, chances are people are going to surround her and ask her how they can help and what's going on and, what's wrong. If you go to work and see a man crying at his desk, my hunch is more people will stay away, leave him alone, not go to support him. Will just figure he would be embarrassed if you went over to him to try to console him. There's more social isolation for men who are in distress. I think it's cultural. I think that it's societal. I think that we still are trying to avoid making men or giving the impression that men are weak if they express emotion. And so we back off. We don't reach in. We don't lean in like we do with women. So in a more male-dominated industry, if men are under stress and we see that men look like they're suffering or struggling with something, our tendency still is to back off, not reach out.
You're listening to The Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent. My guest is Lori Edelson. She's a psychotherapist and the owner of the Birmingham Maple Clinic, and we're discussing the ways to prevent suicide in our communities. And Lori, I do want to move on to some of the signals that we should be looking out for, because suicide is an internal battle, and it's common for no one to know until it's too late, as we've alluded to. So what are some things that we should be watching out for?
So the list is long, and I'm sure I'm not going to be able to give you everything, but people who are talking or thinking and expressing that they're thinking about wanting to die, kill themselves, you'd be better off without me, I'm over it, I'm done, I feel empty. Those are common comments that we have to pay attention to, not brush off as casual sort of, remarks that don't really mean anything. Particularly if you hear someone talking about specific ideas or plans that they have, ideas about how they would do it if they could, or specific plans that they've thought about if they ever reach that point, you want to take that very seriously. Saying people in their life would be better off without them is also something that we hear. We hear young people say that often, and unfortunately parents figure, they're kids, they're teenagers, they're being dramatic. I hear that, but, they'll get over it. Or they're not really serious.
Right.
Something that's interesting that people may not recognize is once someone has really formulated a plan to commit suicide, often you will see their mood drastically improve and almost into euphoria, where they are in a good mood, they're feeling good, they're smiling, they're more interactive, they're more connected, and people will say, wow, they seemed like they had really turned the corner and things were getting better. And so even though I knew that there was this suicidal ideation or real profound, prolonged depression, they really seemed to be doing better, and so I knew they were no longer at risk. That is not the case.
Oh, geez.
So I think you want to pay attention to that. Also, people start giving their belongings away. They may sleep or eat less or more, something really out of their usual pattern. You want to pay attention to that. People withdraw from activities. They may be increasing their use of alcohol or drugs. They may behave recklessly, more recklessly than usual. So I think you want to also look for changes in their behavior. So it can even be a change toward an improved mood that's sudden.
And I just want to point out how devastating that in and of itself is, to be witnessing someone who you think has turned the corner, and it's precisely the opposite, and you don't learn that until it's too late. And so with some of these warning signs in mind, what should people do if someone they know is struggling? What is the most meaningful way that we can help?
The most meaningful thing we can do is to reach out to someone you're worried about. Believe them if they tell you they need help. Don't minimize it. Don't compare it to something you've experienced before. Oh, I've been there. I felt that way too. Do not bring yourself into it. You want to have a meaningful, intimate connection with this person. You start by expressing your concern rather than, I've been there. Instead, it's, I'm worried because I noticed this or I noticed that. How can I help you? I want to help you. It seems like you've been up, you've been down. I'm very concerned. You ask them directly if they've had thoughts about suicide, and don't think that by using the word suicide, you're going to put the idea in their head. The idea is there. And if you can calmly and directly address it using the word suicide, then they feel some relief and some calm because someone finally gets how bad they're feeling. So I would say don't be afraid to get right in there and be very firm. Keep the door open if they don't want to talk about it now, to tell them, look, I'm very concerned about you. I'm worried you're thinking about suicide. You may not want to talk to me now, but I'm going to stay here. I'm here, and you can talk about it with me when you're ready, or I can help you find someone that you would feel safe talking about it with. I think you want to validate that this is a horrible feeling that they're experiencing, and you may not be professional enough or know enough about the right thing to do, but you're going to stay with them until they find the right resource.
So it takes courage from all of us. Lori Edelson is a psychotherapist and the owner of the Birmingham Maple Clinic. Lori, thank you so much for joining me on the Metro.
Thank you so much.
If you or someone you know is struggling, there is help. You can call or text 988 to reach Michigan's Crisis Lifeline. This Saturday, there is a community walk in Stony Creek Metro Park organized by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. There are more Out of the Darkness walks in Southeast Michigan throughout the month, including Ann Arbor, Downriver, and Belle Isle. Up next, yesterday, conservative activist Charlie Kirk was shot and killed. We'll discuss why political violence is happening so often in America and what it means for our society. That's next on The Metro. Stay with us.